Oh, hey everybody, look who finally got his lazy fat ass out in front of the camera for you. Now I know it has been a while and I feel like now is the appropriate time to kind of get back in front of the camera to do this Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends official, unofficial ranking. And if you haven't noticed, yes, kind of wearing glasses now because vision's slightly going a little bit. And I got a brand new vest that I'm working on. It's, you know, still a work in progress. I don't have the little spiky things over here yet, but the other one was getting a little too big, so I decided, probably now's a good time to make a new one. But enough of that happy ass bullshit. Let's get right down to the nuts and bolts of why you're here watching this video, and that's to see me officially rank Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends into the Halloween franchise. Now, I'm not going to go back and re-rank the entire franchise because in preparation of this video, I sat down and I was thinking about it, and there's not too much in that original ranking that's changed. In fact, I would say nothing has changed, which is why I'm not going to re-rank them. It would just be a waste of time. So in order to save you and myself the agony of going through and repeating myself, I am just going to break down Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, and then I'm going to place them in the franchise where I think they should go. Now, yes, it has taken me an extra week than I wanted to get this out, but that's because when I was working on this video, I really wanted to make sure that I was happy with the placement of where I'm going to put these two films in the franchise. But without further ado, let's get right into this video, starting with Halloween Kills. And it's a movie that I both like and find frustrating at the same time. While I prefer my Myers to be a little more stealthy, I love the fact that he is just an uncaged animal in Halloween Kills. That if after the ending of the previous movie had pissed him off, then he was going to take out his frustration on the entire town of Haddonfield, starting with these poor motherfuckers. I also love that the kills are particularly brutal and savage and creative, probably more so than any other film in the franchise, with Myers using a wide variety of weapons to dispatch his victims in gruesome fashion. I also like the flashback stuff to the original Halloween night in 1978. While it's not a perfectly seamless blending to the original, it's pretty damn close enough, especially with the shadows and the lighting, and I can appreciate them going that extra mile to replicate that look and feel of that classic Dean Cundey cinematography. Plus, I also think the score is top-notch with Halloween Kills, but I mean, it's John Carpenter, so that just goes without saying. And if there's been one constant with this David Gordon Green trilogy, it's that the scores for each of his movies have been phenomenal. But where my frustrations begin with this movie is with the story itself. It's extremely thin on plot, favoring brutality over nuance. And over the course of its runtime, the movie kind of feels like it's treading water, not really going anywhere or doing anything. It feels like a 2-hour filler leading up to what would be a conclusion in Halloween Ends. But what I find doubly frustrating is the shit that they set up in Halloween Kills that feels like it's going to lead into major shit in Halloween Ends has no payoff. And much like the original Halloween 2, Laurie is bedridden throughout the majority of this movie, which I get because of all the injuries she had suffered from the 2018 film, and I guess at the very least they give her some nice quiet moments with Will Patton, which I guess is nice, but her presence, much like the rest of the legacy characters that they put into this movie, feels wasted. Speaking of which,
evil dies tonight.
the legacy characters are completely shit on in Halloween Kills. Number one, they are superfluous to the plot. They also serve no real point and are only there as fan service. Out of them all, Tommy Doyle, this time played by Anthony Michael Hall, plays the biggest role as he is kind of the instigator of the mob trying to hunt down Michael.
Evil dies tonight!
But the other returning characters like Lonnie, Nurse Chambers, Lindsay, and Sheriff Brackett are all unceremoniously dismissed either by being killed or just written out completely. Now I get with some of the older cast you can only do so much because, I mean, look at them, they're old.
But she's an old lady. I mean, look at her. She's old.
And you know, God bless Charles Cyphers for wanting to come back and return as Lee Brackett, but I would have liked to have seen his character maybe have more time with Laurie. Instead, we get him in a couple cameo clips, one of which he embarrassingly yells, "Tommy!" and another where he just has to say his famous line from the original.
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
I don't know. I mean, maybe a more cliche line like, "This is for my daughter, you son of a bitch," would have been more appropriate, if not a little cliche, but I don't know.
Evil dies tonight!
But yeah, he dies, she dies, they all die. Well, except for Lindsay. She's the one that's allowed to live, obviously setting up big things for her in the next film, right? Or not.
Evil dies tonight!
Oh yeah, and if I have to hear "Evil Dies Tonight" one more fucking time, I am going to rip off my ears and stuff them into the little holes of my ear canal so I never have to hear that goddamn phrase again. Look, I get why. It's a rallying cry for the mob. It's similar to the shit we have seen play out in real life far too often recently. And maybe on a deeper level, that's why it annoys me. But I think it's just too on the nose and too overplayed in this movie that it borders on cartoony. Ultimately, there is nothing subtle about Halloween Kills, which in a way is a good thing, but I also think it's what holds this film back. It's a lot of shit just thrown at the screen with very little forethought. And the stuff that seems like is being set up for a payoff in the next film never happens. So the end of Kills just feels like a dead end in the middle of a trilogy. And it feels like a dead end because we have to take a 2-hour detour around a completely new story before we get to our destination, which means let's get right into Halloween Ends. Similarly to Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends is an entry I really like, but I also have a lot of issues with. I love the fact that this film takes the chances and the risks that it does by telling a very different story than what we were expecting. In that regard, it's very ambitious. And out of his own little trilogy that he did here, I feel like this is David Gordon Green's best directorial effort as well. But telling that different story as the third act to a trilogy is one of the major issues I have with this movie. Halloween Ends feels more like the start of its own new thing, rather than the conclusion or climax to a 3-part story. In a traditional 3-act structure, you don't wait until the very end or the climax to introduce new characters, or completely deviate into a brand new story. Therefore, I feel Halloween Ends should have been the start of a new trilogy, or it should have been like its own Netflix or streaming series. Or at least, something along those lines, because Halloween Ends does feel like its own sort of spin-off movie because of that direct sort of change in tone between Halloween Kills and this one. Halloween 2018 served as that soft reboot to reintroduce us into the world of the original. And that film flows nicely into Halloween Kills because it picks up almost immediately where 2018 left off. And then the momentum in Kills feels like it's all leading towards a big epic conclusion for Halloween Ends. But then it's like the brakes get hit on a moving train and everything comes to a screeching halt for 90 minutes until we are able to resume again. Now, I'm a Star Wars fan, and I'm going to compare this to that trilogy, and, kind of fitting that, May the 4th be with you, and Revenge of the 5th, and all that coming up right here. But imagine in that original Star Wars trilogy, you've built 2 films up, the conflict between Luke and Vader, and the Rebel Alliance, and the Empire, and then, all of a sudden, in Return of the Jedi, you interject, 2 completely new characters into there that you got to focus on, and wrap their story up before going all the way back to Luke and Vader and the Emperor at the very end to resolve that whole trilogy. It's kind of the same difference here. I know the Corey Cunningham character is a polarizing one, but I actually really like him, and maybe that's because it's somebody who got picked on at a young age, and I know, speaking for myself, we see a little something of ourselves in that Corey character. To a degree, obviously, but I think he's a rich and layered character, and Rowan Campbell does a pretty good job in conveying his slow and agonizing descent from regular kid with a promising future to a murderous psychopath. But again, the third act of a story is not the right time and place to introduce a character like Corey. Now, Had they introduced him in Halloween 2018 or Halloween Kills, and then built up his character through those movies leading into this one, then it wouldn't have felt so forced or so unnatural, and it wouldn't have felt so out of place, because we've seen him built up and progress over time. However, in Halloween Ends, this all feels like too much stuffed into too little. And again, I think it would have worked much better and been better received as its own spin-off series or brand new trilogy, focusing on him. Plus, now that I sit here and think about it, I can't be the only one that gets a lot of Adam Baldwin, My Bodyguard vibes from this guy. And one of the other points of contention I have with this movie is how it treats Michael Myers, the Shape himself. Look, there are a lot of issues that I have with the way he's portrayed in this movie at times. I don't like the whole sidekick aspect with Corey hanging around him, wanting Michael to show him the ways of killing, as if he's his own kind of goddamn Jedi master or some shit. But beyond all of that, I just don't feel his presence in this movie. Now, I know some fans have already tried to defend this by being like, well, you know, he doesn't have that much more screen time than he did in the original movie, and you guys don't complain about that. But let me point this out and let me make this perfectly clear. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. Yes, their overall screen time might be similar, but in the original, even when he was off screen, his presence loomed like a shadow over the entire movie. You knew he was there lurking around and could pop up at any second. In Halloween Ends, yeah, Michael has the same amount of screen time, but because the story is not so much centered around him and Laurie as it is around Corey and Allison, you don't feel his presence looming the same way as you did in the original. But Michael Myers in Halloween Ends is kind of reduced to almost a cameo appearance in his own movie, in his own franchise. Now, I appreciate the way that they, you know, showed that his evil has kind of permeated the city and has also kind of transferred and permeated its way onto Corey. It's just themes like that that I wish they would have explored deeper, and especially in Halloween Kills, that I don't feel like they did enough of in both of those movies. I mean, it's there, they do touch on it, but it's only briefly, and I feel like exploring that more may have gone a long way into making Halloween Ends not feel so much like an outlier to Halloween Kills or Halloween 2018. Now, the other thing that seems to rub people the wrong way about Michael Myers in this movie is the fact that he does look kind of weak. And I can certainly understand that criticism, especially in the scene where he and Corey wrestle for his mask like it's a frickin' lucha match, and, well... yeah, I got no real defense about that one. Michael just looks like a flat-out bitch. But he eventually returns and evens the score on Corey, so at least they did that. I just think where it's jarring for me, and I think other fans, is the way that Halloween Kills ended. Michael Myers was an absolute monster. I mean, we're talking beast mode of all beast modes. I mean, he literally looked like he was unstoppable, and that we were building towards this epic battle and confrontation between Laurie and Michael in Halloween Ends that would probably take up the bulk of the movie. But no, what we got was Michael, after slaughtering everybody, just decides he's going to hide in a sewer for 4 years, and the first we see of him, he looks like a feeble old man. Yeah, it's not the best way to reintroduce Michael in this movie, especially coming off of Halloween Kills. Oh yeah, and the ending to this movie is hokey as shit. Now, I've always been one that says you don't kill Michael Myers because I've always been a fan of more sequels, more the better. They can go 30 sequels and I wouldn't give a shit. But if they are going to tell this kind of isolated story and give the Laurie Strode character a proper send-off that they didn't in the original timeline, then fine, go ahead and kill off the Shape. But I think the funeral procession through town is just stupid, and throwing his body in a grinder is overkill. Now, I get why they did it, because they wanted the finality of that, like, you know, there's no possible way he's coming back from that, but still, come on. Now I know I just sat here and spewed a bunch of reasons as to why Halloween Ends is problematic, but I still do like this movie. There are a lot of films in this franchise that I consider problematic that I still do like and enjoy. And I do believe in time, when this movie gets revisited over the next 5, 10, 15 years, more people will start to come around to it very similarly to how people have now come around to Halloween 3. And much like Halloween 3 as its own movie isolated unto itself, I feel like Halloween Ends works. Again, just not as the third act of a trilogy. It is certainly not the worst film in the franchise. Now I respect fans and their opinions, and they have the right to genuinely feel the way that they do about certain films in the franchise, but the amount of hate that this movie gets I also feel is partly due to the newness of it. And once it gets a chance to settle in, it'll rank a little higher, because in my opinion, it doesn't even come close to being as bad as Halloween Resurrection. Well, that is it. I have officially just ran down my thoughts and my feelings on both Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. Now, do they stack up to the original Halloween 2? Are they as good as that? Are they as good as Halloween 4? Are they as bad as Halloween H2O or Halloween 5? Let's jump right over to my ranking and let's see where they sit. Alright everybody, as you can see, here is my current Halloween franchise ranking as it presently stands, without Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends currently in the mix. So where do those two films ultimately fall on the ranking here? Well, let's start with Halloween Kills first. Halloween Kills is gonna slot right underneath Halloween 2018 and right above Halloween 6. Like I said earlier, I really do enjoy Halloween Kills. I love its brutality. I love Michael Myers in it. It has my favorite Michael Myers mask out of the franchise. My only issues are that the story and the plot is really thin. And like I said, it just feels like we're kind of treading water for 2 hours just to get us to Halloween Ends. There's no real plot escalation or build up, and if there is any escalation, it's immediately killed off by the next movie, which I shouldn't hold against Halloween Kills, but hey, it is what it is. And for what it is, it's still a fun ride. I don't think it's terrible like a lot of people say it is. It's just very middling, especially when it comes to the franchise itself. So that leaves Halloween Ends, and where does that one ultimately fall? Well, I'm going to apologize right now if this comes across as uneventful, but I'm going to sandwich it in right below Halloween Kills and right above Halloween 6, meaning that both Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends just sit right in the middle of my franchise ranking. Similarly to Halloween Kills, like I said with Halloween Ends, I do like the movie, and I do think maybe in years to come down the road I will have a better appreciation for it, or there's also the possibility that I could end up, hating it. But for right now, it sits dead center because there's a lot that I think the movie does well, but there's issues with Michael Myers and the whole third act thing that I beat a dead horse over. That's what keeps it from being great in my opinion. But if you want to look at my franchise ranking as sort of like a tier listing, it sits right with the other films in this franchise that I do really like, but I also recognize are heavily flawed, like Halloween 6 and Halloween 2007 from Rob Zombie. Both movies I enjoy. Both movies do have things, though, that are inherently wrong with either scripting or direction or characters that I feel hold them back from being potentially really good or great films. As they are, they're just okay, or they're fine. As well as Halloween 2018, which I have stated before in previous reviews years ago when the movie came out, that I did like the movie, but there's chunks of it that I feel are just paced oddly. But that's ultimately how I feel about David Gordon Green's trilogy as a whole. I think it's good, but I don't think it's great. But nowadays I feel like people are too wrapped up in being black and white, like it either has to be really good or it's really bad. That there's not much room for in between in a lot of fans' opinions, and for the sake of sounding boring, I'm not one of those people. I kind of live in the gray area where I'm willing to accept if something is not up to par, but I can still enjoy it. But yeah, that is my franchise ranking. Halloween Kills sitting now at number 6, and Halloween Ends sitting at number 7, both right in the middle. Alright everybody, that is it. I am done with Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street for at least a little while. This whole thing has exhausted me. I think I've run the gamut on just about everything that I could rank in these franchises, at least for right now, until I think of more. But I felt like this was a good capper, seeing as how Halloween Ends just came out this fall, that I would take the time and then let this marinate and come back and officially put these in my rankings. And if you haven't seen my other ranking video for Halloween, I suggest you go watch that. I had a lot of fun making it. I think you'll have a lot of fun watching it. It is a bit lengthy, but whatever. That's what she said. But anyways, where do Halloween Kills and Ends fall on your ranking? I know a lot of people and a lot of fans don't like either. There's a lot of fans that prefer one over the other. You know, I'm the type that as long as you don't do anything too egregious, you're not going to piss me off that much. So I'm comfortable with where I ranked them. Where have you guys ranked them? And always remember, like, comment, and subscribe. Adios. Now, GTFO!